All right, Big Man, today's Thursday. It is February 24th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Here we are. It's myself. It's Dante. It's Chief. Boys, how are you doing? Dante, you first. Look at you guys. You guys are like fucking texting away over there.
What's that?
Sorry.
You're good?
Sorry you started a little prematurely
abruptly. What's going on?
Nothing. I think for the first time, I'm in the room with someone who is better color than me.
True. That is
That's
true.
a fact.
That is true. Lucky for you. You don't even, no real sunburn. I would just be red. I'd still be red for a week.
I was pretty red the day of, but it's
You're not red. You're like, you got like a...
He's got a base.
Yeah, you look good.
Complexion. Yeah. I got a little Italian
You
in
look
me.
good. I think you should keep it like going year round.
It would be great to. How do you do it, though?
I could see you being a tanning bed guy.
I
Take a little dip in the Russian bathhouse and head over to the tanning bed.
I've never done it.
Okay.
They have
I'm not
tanning
opposed.
beds at Red Square. You can fucking knock it
do
out
they?
while you're over there. Fuck yeah,
I
they
didn't
do.
know that. I did not know
Yeah,
that.
there's an LA tan inside there.
You've been definitely gone tanning.
No, I've just seen the sign.
Don't lie, though. You've definitely
in
your
the
life?
tanning beds?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to go once a month.
You like...
Have to go once a month in Chicago.
Oh,
Otherwise,
do you really
get,
go once a month?
Yeah, you get low
Really?
vitamin D if you don't.
You just take a
can-
fucking supplement.
Can't you? Yeah. Can't you take
That
vitamin?
doesn't work.
What do
You
you mean
don't
it
think so?
doesn't work?
I know it doesn't.
How?
There's a whole
Dude,
fucking...
this is a vanity thing. Just say you like having
Swear
olive
to
oil
God,
skin.
There's a whole fucking study. People of Mediterranean descent with low vitamin D. It's a domino effect for a whole bunch of other shit. Low vitamin B, depression, all this other shit.
I got news for you, man. That's not just people of Mediterranean descent.
It's easy. It's more spiked or some shit like that.
Okay, you need vitamin D to basically have an immune system. Like vitamin D is like what it's not a vitamin. First of all, it's a hormone, and it helps you produce all sorts of things. And that was like a big thing with COVID too. That people that had really high levels of vitamin D fought off COVID more easily than those who were vitamin D deficient.
I did read that somewhere too,
Yeah.
but it got brushed under the rug really quickly.
I didn't know that you go once a month.
Yeah, but when I travel a lot, like I was just in LA, I was in Florida. Yeah, I don't have to because I go in the sun for a day.
Mm-hmm.
LA was fucking scorching while we were out there.
But you know what's nice about LA that someone brought to my attention was that you could go in the shade and you're like cool. Whereas like somewhere else like Florida, it's still sticky.
It's muggy, man.
Right.
There's
There's no humidity out
dry
there.
desert heat.
Yeah, which is like,
Yeah.
wow, that's a good point.
That was great.
Yeah, that was very nice.
So I forgot I thought you still had the color from LA because
No.
I still do. And then you were like, no, I was in Daytona this weekend.
Well,
Duh.
yeah.
I was talking to you.
Well, I went to Miami to LA and I didn't get anything. And then I was like, all right, I got to make it a point to just fucking bake one day. And that's what I did.
Fucking bi-coastal Ed, man.
I know. It's crazy. Ton
So
of traffic.
real quick before we go off on a huge detour, how awesome was Daytona? You were telling me all weekend.
It was good. It was good. I talked a lot about it in yesterday's episode, but it was definitely a cool experience that, like, to me, dude, there's four, we grew up on the four major sports, but like, you still know like how popular and how big the other ones is. And like, you still know like, oh, like Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt,
Yeah.
like those guys mean a lot to a sector of society that I really don't have much experience with, So like to me to sit there like and see like the history, I like that shit,
Did you see a lot of Intimidator shirts and flags down there?
That's number 3, right? Yeah.
What do you mean?
Dale.
It's Dale.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, not like overly like. To be
I'm
honest.
surprised.
Yeah.
I feel like I used to, probably maybe like 20 years ago, I could rattle off 20 NASCAR drivers just from watching SportsCenter. Because I used to, like, that was part of my daily routine. SportsCenter obviously had a huge NASCAR segment 20 years ago. I don't know if they still do or not, but I just feel like everybody's off of SportsCenter. But I used to, like, just almost get, like, NASCAR knowledge through, like, osmosis. Like, it was just SportsCenter was on in the background. I'd be like, like, oh, Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon. Like, I could just rattle these names off. Now it's just, like, I don't know.
Yeah. No,
Joey Logano.
there's a lot now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'd know more than you'd realize.
Yeah.
But
I think it would have to be like reversed. If you were like to say the name, be like, that's a NASCAR driver.
yeah.
But if you were like
Kyle
my
Busch,
own
Kurt
recall,
Busch, like,
it'd be tougher. Yeah.
yeah, no, I hear you.
I think F1 is like not overtaken it, but it's
getting very popular.
Gained a ton of
People
ground
loved
on
that Netflix show, which I haven't seen yet either.
I got into F1 this year.
Because of the Netflix show?
The show got me into it, but then you watch like one or two races and you're like, I'm fucking in on it. It's actually
pretty sick,
super exciting, and they're quick. They're not that long, and it's
the
great.
Races.
Yeah, and it's great. There's nothing else on when they're on. It's like,
see, I feel like soccer would be on.
Yeah, soccer is just, there's too many leagues I can't fucking follow.
That's my problem with soccer too.
Like World Cup, I love.
Yeah.
The Gold Cup, I love.
I definitely, yeah.
Euro Cup was awesome. It's just like these different leagues.
Yeah,
It's
CONCACAF, and then there's Europa,
they're all over the place.
and then there's the champions, and then there's this.
I hear that, and I would say that my biggest issue with soccer historically, I've always loved it, but I never had a favorite team.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to like get super deep into it when it's like, well, I don't really. The only team I care about plays once every 4 years.
Yeah.
You know, and on like the biggest stage. So which would be the U.S. soccer team. So now now that I've like through my brother have picked up Nottingham Forest, it kind of makes everything else fall into place.
That's nice then.
Yeah.
Also, gambling on NASCAR is very fun because
So I don't even know how you would do it.
you just pick a winner. You pick a top 5.
So like it's a horse racing kind of
yeah,
thing?
exactly. I mean, it's not like trifectas and shit, but like it's
You can't do a trifecta in NASCAR?
Not to my knowledge.
If you do 1, 2, 3?
I could be wrong though.
Okay.
You should be able to though.
Should
for
be able
sure.
to, yeah.
But you could do like, oh, I think this guy's going to place in the top 5. Like you could do something like that, top whatever.
Did you get decent odds like a horse race?
yeah, they're big.
They're big.
Okay.
But like, because at the end of the day, it's almost like going to a casino and like seeing a war table because like, there's something cool about like, hey, Chief and Dante, we're gonna go in the alley. You guys are gonna race, and we're gonna bet on. And a race is just like it's such a fun thing to bet on. It's so like, so finite. You're not gonna worry about a back door. You know what I mean? It's pretty cut and dry.
You're right.
I didn't watch much of the Olympics, but I had that thought. It's an event that I hadn't seen before, which was a speed skating, and it was not short track, but it had, because short track with Ono back in the day, that used to be fucking chaos, right? Where guys were falling all over the place and like fall at the last second. This had probably like 8-10 skaters around the long track. And I remember being like, I wish there were horses. I wish I could bet on this like there were horses.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
So it was good though. Before we continue though, guys, I want to talk about, sorry, I was going to say guys, but I don't know what I said. I stumbled there. But I want to talk about yourfuzzy.com. Have we talked about this when you're on yet?
I don't know where this is going.
As a guy who has traveled, like, how many hours in a car for Lola, the weather dog? Didn't you have surgery?
10. I think it's 10.
So listen to this. You're going to like this, okay? So Fuzzy, this is a sponsor of this show. It's a telehealth service for pet parents that offers 24/7 access to personalized pet care from veterinarian professionals. How many times have you been in the middle of the night and you're like, oh, my dog is like, I don't know what's going on?
So they come to you?
No, it's like a Zoom type deal.
Telemedicine.
So it's like,
how does it work with an animal? They can't talk.
well, you just be like, hey, like here's what's going on.
Here are the symptoms. Here's this. Here's that. So rather than running down to the vet ER at 2 a.m, which the prices are absurd,
dude,
only to find out like everything's fine.
Clybourne Med Vet. They whack you.
Yeah, and I know you. What was your old dog was awesome. What was
Max.
Max, yeah. And then what was the one before that?
Dino.
Yeah. I don't know if I met him, but I know I met
the
Max,
terriers, right?
Yeah, Max and Dino, the boxer. Yeah.
So yeah,
good memory,
dude. Like it's just a good service to have if you're a pet.
Yep.
So from everyday questions to middle of the night emergencies, Fuzzy has the answers pet parents need. Through live chat and virtual vet consultations available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Fuzzy can answer your pet questions, big and small, urgent, and every day. Fuzzy can also recommend the exact right products for your pet, all of which are handpicked by their established team of veterinarian professionals and available at discounts exclusive to Fuzzy members. From getting your pet's diet just right to meeting their middle of the night needs to finally figuring out what makes their breath smell that way, nothing is too big or small for a quick Fuzzy call. So right now, Fuzzy is offering our listeners a free 7-day trial membership. Go to yourfuzzy.com/dog today to sign up. It's a free 7-day trial at yourfuzzy.com/dog. And for a limited time, Fuzzy is also offering a special discount of $20 off any of your pet's product needs, pet meds, supplements, food, and more with promo code DOG. That's yourfuzzy.com/dog. One more time for your free trial of Fuzzy with access to 24/7 personalized pet care and vet recommended products. I thought you'd like that one.
That's a genius business model.
Yeah, I agree. I really do. All right, so the doc we watched, did you do anything else? Or you want to talk about Luke, right? Combs?
Oh, fuck yeah, dude.
I know you want to ask about
So you and I were texting throughout the weekend because I told you talked to me before you went down there, and I was like, bro, Daytona is one of the most wild places I've ever been.
Okay, I don't think I realized.
Yeah, remember I told you I went with Sammy, and I was like, it's the best people, the best people watching I've ever experienced in my life.
And you went for the race too?
No, we were down there. Sammy had a show. I forget who we played with.
Sammy Adams.
Sammy Adams. I think it was Waka Flocka, who I'm playing with in a few weeks with Bree, which is going to be awesome.
That's sick.
But we had a show down there, and I've been to Florida a million times. Daytona is its own world.
Yeah.
It is, and this wasn't even a race weekend, but I never saw so many like old ladies with like biker tank tops and just like tats,
sleeves,
like loose skin, fucking tatted, leathery, chain smoking, shirts with just like "fuck your mother" on them everywhere. Just it reminded me of a trashier like boardwalk, like Jersey boardwalk.
It sounds like the way you describe it, everyone sounds like Mac's mother from Always Sunny. If you've watched that show,
great.
That's what it sounds like.
Great description. Yeah. So yeah, I told Ed, and Ed was like, "Nah, man, I like it. I could see myself down here." I was like, "I heard you're moving."
Ed's looking for retirement property.
Started a little rumor on Twitter, and he was like, "I might have to confirm it." He liked it. So then I see just a random, I think Glennie posted it. You guys fucking hanging out with Luke Combs. I'm like, how do you not tell me you met like the biggest star in country music right now?
I didn't know it was going to happen until like the last, like the day of where they're like, oh yeah, we're going to like meet up with them for a second to say what's up. I was like, oh, that's great. So really nice guy.
So how did that happen? Did you guys have like a handler or something?
Yeah. Because NASCAR, it's a partnership with Barstool.
Yeah, I know.
So, we were with the crew. Their marketing crew is awesome, by the way. Like very, very nice people. Just real laid back. Like definitely like a good Barstool vibe with that crew.
Okay.
And
I gotta get to a race.
Yeah, I said, hopefully the Miami one happens.
Yeah, that would be great.
And they're like, yeah. So he was like doing like a Q&A, like kind of question and answer for him in like one of the conference rooms. And then after that, like he walked off and he just like, we were in that little area waiting for him, and then just said what's up. And then he had the sickest Miller Lite hat I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, it was. I saw that.
I didn't even notice it. What was it?
It was just this like blue hat that just said light. It was just so simple but so awesome. A beautiful Miller Lite hat. But yeah, super nice guy.
Yeah, I was telling you before we started. So his story was he played it last year, and I guess it wasn't a full go because of COVID, and he was still honored and excited to play it. But I guess he made a comment like, it was always my dream to play, and I would have loved to do it full throttle. And they were like, oh, we'll just have you back next year. So they had him back this year. And did he play before?
That was the craziest part about it.
It was before the race?
He played, the race was at 2. It started at like 2:30. He played at 1:50 on the blacktop, like on the, like it's crazy. And then they just clear out everybody. They have everyone standing on there.
So it's almost like a Super Bowl halftime show done before the race.
But people are like
on the field. Like it's it's
that's
crazy.
Dope.
It's crazy.
That's crazy.
That was sweet though. All right, so the doc we watched today was called "Downfall: The Case Against Boeing." I feel like there's a shit ton of things trending on Netflix right now.
Yeah,
and this is kind of getting overlooked because like what's that?
Anna Dolphin.
Yeah, that one. There was.
Did you watch that?
The Kanye one was going.
We had Feidelberg on our podcast last night, and he was in the middle of watching it, and I told him I read the story before I watched it, and he was like, "Oh, doesn't matter. It's based on the article you read," which is kind of weird. And I was like, the story's fucking nuts. He's like, you gotta watch the show's awesome.
It's awesome.
Really?
It's awesome. It's a great documentary.
I think I'm gonna knock it out this weekend.
Yeah.
I just fucking 9 is so hard.
I mean, you got to have a little bit more perseverance, Ed. I can't sit and watch shows. Like, what are you talking about?
Because I told
fucking
you,
Gen Z, man. These kids have no attention
We'll
span.
put the show on 1 minute segments on TikTok at a time, so Ed can do
problem
it.
is there's so many things that I want to watch that I just end up not watching anything.
Right. So
everyone's like, oh, you got to do Gemstones, you got to do Dave, you got to do Dope Sick. Which one should I do first then, Chief? Dope Sick or Anna?
I know there is
Dope
a lot.
Sick.
There is a lot. You're right.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then there's fucking Kanye's out.
You're
then
right.
It's like,
There's
what
a
am I gonna?
lot.
I want to see the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre because
all you got to
support my guy Pat.
Okay, but like this is what do you call it? I say this to. This is analysis by paralysis by analysis. Oh, there's so many. Which one should I watch? And they end up doing nothing.
So I just do nothing.
You do nothing.
Correct.
Just pick. Throw a dart and pick one. You won't regret it. I'm sure all those things you listed are very good.
I feel like this goes in ebbs and flows. Like we were in a drought for a while.
I think it was because of COVID. No one was producing anything.
Yeah, everything was dead, and there was nothing to watch. And now there's too much to watch.
Yeah.
It's like where was all this shit a year ago?
Correct.
But this doc was very fucking depressing and infuriating.
And it was super, super interesting.
I mean, incredibly well done.
Yep.
Incredible. One of the best. We've watched 2 amazing ones in a row.
Yeah, so you want to say going into talking about planes,
Yeah.
and then be like, all right, like I'm getting a little worried here. This might be way over my fucking head.
They did a
But
great job.
They did a great job explaining what the fuck happened.
Broke everything down into like English.
Yeah, you didn't have to be
Yes.
an aeronautics engineer to understand what the problem was.
Yeah, and so listen, definitely recommend watching it. We'll give our, I forget our rating system.
We had a
but
system.
but we'll do that at the end. But first and foremost, it's about the 787 MAX, right? Is that 787?
737
I knew I'd
Max.
fuck up the
Yeah.
number. So the 737 MAX that Boeing made, and really, I mean, it was just a classic case of a company who just stopped giving a fuck about the product and only caring about the money.
That was the thing that irked me the most because this doc was about Boeing. I'm sure you can do one about the financial sector. You can do one about pharmaceuticals. You could do one. Nobody gives a shit about anything except for their stock price and making money.
It's the same story with all of it.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is like, listen, if fucking if Burger King wants to fucking botch their fries, all right, not that much of a fucking harm there, right? People are just not going to like it. They're going to complain that the old ones are better.
And go across the street to McDonald's.
Yes, you can't do this with a fucking airplane.
Yeah.
Amen.
You can't
Right.
do it.
Yeah.
Amen.
You cannot do that.
When they were interviewing the workers on the line, and these people were like, yeah, usually when there were problems, we'd raise our hand and be like, hey, we got a problem over here. And we would address it and fix it. And he's like, when McConnell came in, we would get yelled at. So they were like shooting the messenger and being like, fucking move it along. We got Airbus is on our ass. We got to get these out.
Right. So we should probably talk about that too. Because there's a great show called The Men Who Built America. Have you seen that on History Channel?
There's a podcast that's similar to it that I listen to.
Let me write that one
sometimes.
down.
It's awesome.
Put it on your list, Ed. And they done they did the first one was about like Rockefeller, Henry Ford, Vanderbilt. We should do a what they do about Vanderbilt because I fucking love that guy.
Oh, man.
And then and there was one in Carnegie, okay? And then they did like the next generation of it was like Ford again, but it was all about like aerospace. And Boeing was like a guy, and he was based in Seattle. And he started this company, and they became the gold standard for aviation. Like they were the number one, like almost a monopoly because they were so awesome at it. And they kind of developed the jetliner in the 50s and 60s. And
That shocked me, by the way.
what part?
When they showed the origin of the company, they kind of talked about what you're talking about right now, and they showed like these commercial jetliners were fucking huge in the 50s. I didn't know it started that early.
When did you think it started?
60s.
Okay.
But
yeah.
like I think the 50s, like fucking Mickey Mantle and like color TV starting to like come around.
Airplanes are fucking
I thought they
crazy.
still had propeller like.
Well, I think they did up until, so like that was like one of the races of World War II. Was that and we've talked about this on other shows, that Operation Paperclip, where you had like rockets and jet engines was like this new technology. And there's another History Channel show about like all these weapons systems and all these different systems that Hitler was developing like at the end of the war, that if they could have perfected those systems by the end of the war, like it could have turned the whole war around. Like even though like, you know, the walls were closing in on Berlin, if they had figured out this tech, you know, they would have been able to do it. So that was like, it was the war that really, World War II, that really drove innovation on these different things. So if you look at like World War II footage, all the bombers and all the planes, there were no jets. Okay. Right. By the end of the Korean War, there were like jet engine airplanes. And then certainly by Vietnam, that there was all sorts of jet engine fighter craft and all that. And then that made its way into commercial too in the 50s. So it was like that technology was born out of World War II and then made its way into like mainstream, you know, capitalism with the jetliners by the 50s. So that was really, Boeing kind of pushed that ball forward. They're obviously a big supplier during World War II, along with GM and Ford and all those other places making tanks and Jeeps and et cetera. But then they developed the idea, or they perfected the idea of the jetliner. And then Pan Am, all those places, they made air travel accessible to everybody, similar to the way that Henry Ford made cars available to everybody. But their thing was like, we're going to make the best, safest product, and then people will buy it because they trust us.
Right.
And that was like at their core, their foundation since their beginning, and then into the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And then the 90s is when things started going haywire because they merged with McDonnell Douglas.
Yeah, and it was, not to backtrack a minute, but it was really cool hearing all the former employees talk about how much pride everyone had in working for them. And like the guy was like, they made us wear these stupid shirts, and if we walked out of work in them, everybody was like, oh my God, you work for Boeing? That's incredible. Yep. Like, that's such a great company.
So obviously, like, we know we're doing these to review them and talk about them. When I saw that whole background, I just imagine how enraged Chief was.
Why?
Because I just know how much he appreciates and loves like American classic companies.
Yep.
And to see that whole, because like they really like Boeing. What is it saying? Boeing, or if it's not Boeing, we're not going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I just know like how much like you love that kind of shit.
I do.
And then like to see what it turned out was like, I'm like, Chief's probably enraged right now.
I hate people. I hate people cutting corners, and this goes back to my old job, cutting corners on quality assurance and engineering. And I'm not an engineer, but in dealing with engineers professionally can be very annoying because there's always something that they can make better. Okay. And like, well, if we tweak this, it'll be this much, it'll be 1% better, but that'll help with, and like, they're never done. Okay. It doesn't matter what the product is. An engineer is like never like totally satisfied. They're tinkerers, I think, by nature. But I think when you're building airplanes, that's a good thing.
Right.
And they had this comment about how like prior to this merger, it was McConnell Douglas, right?
Yep.
Okay. Prior to this merger with McConnell Douglas, they would have 15 quality assurance people on the floor in every factory per shift. And I imagine that they were running 3 shifts. So 45 people in each plant across the globe doing quality assurance, making sure every fucking lug nut is screwed in there the right way. Everything is plugged in there the right way. There's no shit on the wires. There's no particles. Everything is done perfectly. Because you know what? If you're not, then you're fucking killing people. And guy made a comment that stuck with me, is that, the new people came in, this merger of McConnell Douglas came in as like, they acted as if we were building washers and dryers.
Yep.
And it's like, you knew exactly what he meant, because they took so much pride, because you know what, if we get something wrong, people die, versus, we got something wrong, they're closed, you have to put the clothes back in for another 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like the stakes when you're building airplanes are as big as they can get, and so you can't cut corners, and these people did, because it helped with their stock price.
It was kind of mind-blowing when they showed the newspaper headlines of the massive layoffs, like 5,000, 3,000, 8,000 at a time, multiple times. And the people were like saying, like you just said, there was a woman who was a quality control specialist, and she was like, yeah, we went from having, 30 people on our team down to, 10, and they were making us work more hours. Mm-hmm. It's just like common, almost like private equity when they come in and,
exactly,
try to trim fat that's not really fat.
Right.
Yet, and then they implement that whole share value program, which was ridiculous to me.
Right.
They're preaching, we need to be concerned about the stock price to mechanics and like metal workers. It's like, what the fuck do they care?
I mean, this would be like, if we're going to relate it back to us, and the Barstool would be like, Dave moves on and they hire a CFO to be head of content, where it's like Dave understands content. He's in it every day. He's willing to like take risks and listen to people. And, if you listen to the Portnoy show this week, it's like he wants creative people doing creative things. Well, same thing where it's like you want a guy who set the foundation for the company, a guy like Boeing, the original founder. That guy, he just wanted, like, he was just passionate about it, about air travel and airplanes. Like, that's all he cared about. So, like, when you have like that pillar, and it gets baked into the culture, when you pull that out, that's going to ruin everything. And it's like they didn't. It's just pursuit of the dollar. Do they need to fire those people? The company was still profitable, but they were getting rid of people just to be like, so their P&L sheet would look better.
Well, the thing that I love is it was a straight merger where all the suits stayed on. They changed titles and roles. So you have 15 fucking vice presidents who all do the same thing, which is nothing. All with salaries, inflated, bonus packages and all that shit. And then the people in the middle and the lower rungs are the ones that get
squeezed.
And
it's like all your position. We have redundancies.
Yeah.
So we're going to remove these people because it's a redundant position. And they just keep cutting. And what happens? The product sucks.
But again, it's like back to Ed's point. Any other product, you're like, all right, whatever. Mm-hmm. We'll find an alternative. You're talking about airplanes.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
What the fuck, man?
Yeah.
Hey, let's take a quick break here because we got to talk about Roman swipes. Listen, you guys know the drill by now. Stop using these methods to last longer in bed. Stop counting the ABC. You don't count the ABCs. You say them. Stop saying the ABCs. Stop counting backwards from 10 because there's really just no need for that stuff anymore because Roman swipes are here and they're a clinically proven way to last longer in bed. They're effective, easy to use, and they're fast acting, but they don't require prescription. The swipes ship to you in discreet, unmarked packaging as well, and each swipe packet is small enough to hide in your wallet for whenever you need it. They're super easy to use. Just take the swipe out of the packet, swipe it on, let it dry, and you're good to go. That's it. Go to GetRoman.com/dogwalk to get your first month of swipes for just $5 when you choose a monthly plan. That's GetRoman.com/dogwalk. Go check these out. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
No brainer. Discreet, fits in your wallet. And anytime I hear the word clinically tested and approved, just makes me feel better.
You're right.
You know what? You just rattled off like things not to do. You know what just popped into my head and I'm so fucking mad about it. I had this really disturbed friend. I'm still friends with him. He's not as disturbed anymore, but in college, he used to tell us his method was he would think of his grandma bringing him like baked like cookies or cupcakes or something.
Well,
and that fucking just got into my head now, and I had it blocked out because there was a period of time where unwillingly that would pop into my head.
Yeah. You just
Gross.
Popped in.
Yeah,
well, so fucked up.
That reminds me of like the Happy Gilmore when he's in the happy zone, and 1 second you got the girlfriend, she's all scantily clad, looking great, and next is like the grandma and the midget. I'm like, there should be like separation in church and state. Like, just keep all like, even if that's your method, keep your grandma out of it, and that just keep your grandma out of it. Use Roman swipes.
You're right. Maybe that's where you got it from.
Maybe.
That's a great scene. Julie Bowen and
young Julie Bowen.
Don't do that. Use clinically proven methods. Go get GetRoman.com/dogwalk. All right, let's hop back into the episode.
And to your point earlier, like I'm sure everybody listening has booked a flight. Has anybody ever been like, well, give me the Airbus flight, or give me the, like you just say, hey, whatever one is cheaper.
I'll tell you what. I fly a lot. I've never paid attention when they give the fucking exit row speech, and now I'm like, they always say you're on a Boeing 727, 737. Like, read the pamphlet, blah blah blah. Now I'm gonna be like listening. If I'm on a fucking Boeing, I'm gonna be like, a little nervous now.
Especially if you do a couple dips, like that would be actually kind of fucked up.
So talk about the whole
MCAS
issue at hand here with the whole MCAS and all that.
Right. So what they came out with this plane, and that was part of the issue as well. And I mentioned Airbus a second ago. So historically, when I said, Boeing at times was almost a monopoly, they showed this graph that was their market share. I want to say the graph started in like 1972 or something like that. They had like 94% market share. It was fucking crazy.
It was ridiculous.
And they showed them, and like, and we've talked about Howard Hughes before. Like, Hughes had his own aircraft design company, and then he kind of lost his mind and died in the 70s. So it was really Boeing and then everybody else. And Airbus was part of everybody else. And then Airbus, slowly but surely over time, got over 50% market share. And that was seen as a catastrophe for Boeing. So... And rightfully so, but they had lost their way after this merger. So they came out with this, 737 MAX, which was the whole idea. Okay, and there's been documents released about like internal memos and documents released about this. It was like, if we call this a whole new plane, okay, that requires. So it's not just a 737 next generation or the next model. It's not if we're going to use cars, okay, let's say like, hey, it's a 2022 Chevy Malibu, okay. If it was, then you would if you change the name from Malibu to something else, well, then your entire pilot staff globally has to do a training seminar on how to fly this new plane. So like, we're just going to call it a 737 MAX and say it's just the next generation and it's not this different thing. But all the systems, or a lot of the systems, were different because they, and
engine
a lot
moved up and shit.
Right,
They had
so
to reconfigure the
whole plane. So like,
it was more fuel efficient.
Yeah.
The aerodynamics were different.
Yep. So I think they made it either longer or shorter. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But they did fundamentally change the plane, but they sold it as this is just the next generation of the plane we already have, so they could cut corners on these training seminars where you would have to take pilots out of rotation and you would have to send them, away to do these crazy flight simulators and systems updates. So they would be proficient.
This is so fucked.
Proficient, but they're like, well, they said that, planes are ungodly expensive, right? They're like millions upon millions of dollars for every plane. But it's more, what's the most expensive thing is the people and the training and the hours, because you have to pay all these people to do the training when you're like, so you're paying them to do the training without their normal nut, okay, without having.
You're paying them and they're not working.
So there's no passengers behind them. You're paying them just sit in a simulator. So you're losing a ton of money on that. And multiply that to how many pilots they have, across the country having to fly these planes. So that's like it's a big cost. So they tried to eliminate that by changing the name. And then they said, hey, we don't want to overload our pilots with information, so we're not even going to tell them about this MCAS system. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about,
dude?
And
insane.
the MCAS system fundamentally alters the way the plane flies. And if you don't even know, so they talked about the guy in Indonesia, okay, and they tried to be like, oh, pilot error.
Dude, that was,
they threw this poor dead guy under the bus.
So fucked up.
Yep.
So fucked up, because this poor bastard is in the cockpit flying this plane, and this is the one thing I didn't understand. The only thing that didn't make sense to me that they explained, they mentioned numerous times, but they didn't explain it to me, is why would the plane stall when it was accelerating upwards? Like, wouldn't it stall every time it was taking off if that was the case?
Only if it got up to a certain angle. So any plane, they call it the attack angle. So you want to gradually go up and level off. But when they had to alter the design of the plane, they moved the engines up on the wing and closer towards the fuselage. and that increased aerodynamics and made it more fuel efficient, everything else. But the other thing that happened with that is that it would oftentimes cause a sharper increase in angle. So they tried to counteract that by any time the plane starts to go up too much vertically, the tail fin would automatically alter
push the nose down.
So you would have a stable, steady incline. Because if you do go straight up, you come straight down. You can't, like, an airplane can't just continually go up like a rocket. So like a rocket booster, it could go straight up vertically or into outer space.
You just kind of stall, right?
Right. A plane would just get to a point and then come right back down.
All right, because that's what they were saying. They were like, the plane will stall, so this prevents it from stalling. And I was like, why the fuck would it stall? I didn't.
Yeah, it's just the attack angle.
Be like a pencil instead of.
Yeah,
right.
I get it. Well, they kept mentioning attack angle. That made sense. So this technology, this MCAS, they call it MCAS, would prevent, like you said, the attack angle from getting too sharp.
Too vertical,
It would dip the nose automatically. So this poor guy has no clue that this is even built into the system.
Right.
And he's fighting against it naturally. They said his joystick or his whatever is shaking uncontrollably, which is like a warning sign that something's wrong. He's pulling back because the plane is like basically nose diving. So it's going like this.
Right.
When they check the black box, they're like, yeah, it was erratic. It was up and down, and then it picked up so much speed that it was eventually out of control.
Right. And that was the other thing. So it was going too fast. But when you're taking off like that, and they would say that, they would eventually get it to a point where the MCAS system would shut off and normalize. But it would be like 5 seconds off, 10 seconds on. So it's like eventually that pattern, you're going down because you're going 600 miles an hour, point it down. Even if you correct and you correct for 5 seconds, well, over a period of time, every 10 seconds, you keep going further and further down. And that was the part. I don't have a fear of flying, but they later in the documentary, they basically showed what it would be like from the inside of the cockpit, where he's just going down uncontrollably, like recreated it digitally. It almost looked like a simulator, but it's just like, holy shit, like this is totally out of this guy's control. He doesn't even know to turn off the thing because he can't turn it off because he doesn't know it exists because they never told him.
And then they show really at the end, like the stopping point. It's like, yeah, guess how much time he had?
10
fucking seconds,
yeah.
Dude. Insane.
10 seconds.
Right.
You know what fucked my head up a little bit was I don't know if it was just difference between Indonesian or Asian media and our media, but I've never seen the aftermath of a crash like they showed in this documentary, like the hole.
Yeah.
And I always wondered this after 9/11 and the Pentagon crash, is there's like no fucking wreckage anywhere. There's very few parts of the plane, and then there was tons of clothing, shoes, and they pulled this all out of the ocean, obviously.
Yeah.
And they just had it piled up for the family members to go through and like look for shit. And that was like, holy fuck.
But even the Ethiopia one, which was the second plane to crash of these 737 Maxes, you saw the crater for that.
Right.
There's very little debris from that too. Like you had debris, and they always talk about that with the Pennsylvania crash in 9/11 too. It's kind of just like, unless they just didn't show very much, looked like just a hole in the ground.
Like what happens to the plane?
I don't know.
It's kind of fucking nuts. But
no.
So then Boeing buries this Indonesian case. They say it's all in this pilot.
Yeah.
He fucked up. They don't train their pilots well enough over there. I mean, and it's even worse because they knew what they knew
in real time.
I mean, that, like, the fact that these guys aren't in jail.
Well, bro, they were mocking Lion for their concerns in the emails. Like, that was, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, no, you got it. Like, it's fine. Like, dude, what?
Yeah. And that was another thing, another cost-cutting measure, right? So that MCAS system is based off of this sensor that's at the front of the plane. And they say for, historically, anytime you have an instrument in your plane that is vital to that plane being able to land and take off safely, there's multiple points of entry for data to come in. So there'd be multiple sensors. So basically, if one malfunctions, you could check the other one. It doesn't fuck you up. So they only put it on the left side if you're looking at, or if you're the pilot, it's on your left. So they only put that sensor on the left side. And they talked about this. They had this other guy on who's like, yeah, like, if you hit a balloon, if you hit a bird, if you hit, fucking anything that could fuck with your plane, it's going to fuck up the MCAS and crash your plane. So it's like, how do you cut costs on something that is that instrumental?
Dude, it's like they were making bicycles or something. Like,
dude, yeah. And think about it this way too, for that second flight. This was a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you never want to be like, oh, it could have been me, but like, did anyone, hop on one of these during that period?
I'm sure I did.
Yeah.
So what was it, like 16 weeks later or something like that? 16 weeks after the first crash?
I think it was 18 weeks, but yeah, for like 5 months.
Every single person who hopped on one of those flights was a sitting duck.
Could have happened to literally anybody. Like, Boeing is probably lucky to a degree that it happened in places where I think a lot of people can easily just dismiss it, like, that was Indonesia.
Totally. And that's not to slight them at all, but it's just
but Boeing did. Boeing got out there and they were giving their reports being like, wow, pilot error, and like, we have the system. And they basically just tried to, it was not us. They had a shitty pilot, not us. And then it happened again. This is the other part that really like pissed me off. Probably pissed me off more than the other thing you said would piss me off, is when, they had the second crash and Boeing pulls out the same playbook. It's not us. And then the black box data comes out, and Australia, China, Italy, France, England, Ireland instantly ground.
How about China leading the way? That shocked me.
That shocked me too. It makes me think that they're trying to get into aviation. They might have other motivations, but they were early on, grounding these planes, and obviously rightfully so. But then, a bunch of other, Germany, a bunch of these other countries did the same thing, and the United States didn't do it. The FCC came out and was like, no, like, these planes are safe. Like, these are like one-off things.
No, the FAA.
FAA. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
FAA. Yeah. But a Federal Aviation Association or something like that. The FAA says they're safe. And it's like, well, you actually have these studies that say that if this isn't corrected, you'll have 2 crashes a year, was it? Something like that. But it would be, long story short, the deadliest plane ever put into the market for commercial use, the most dangerous, deadliest plane that's what their models predicted. So I guarantee it brought me back to the opioid crisis one, or the student debt crisis one, where it's like, if this is, the United States, and you're the FAA, and the major competitor for Boeing is Airbus out of France, you're in bed with Boeing. So they probably just were like, hey, like, it's fine. And they're like, well, you're the only people that we really have to monitor. So you're fine. I've just felt like that's where my brain went, where it's like, they're removing their responsibility because of probably for ill-gotten reasons.
But that was kind of the beginning of the end for, they're obviously still in business, but that's where shit started to go downhill for them, because Trump stepped in and said,
this is fucked.
We're grounding them.
Yeah.
And then that's when Congress, of course, put their hat on and said, all right, we need a hearing on
investigation.
This.
Yeah.
I will say, the congressional hearings, the captain that they had on that went right at the Boeing captain, he was the man. Was it Schumacher or something? I forget his name, Captain something. But
you didn't.
This is Captain Sully, man.
Brother.
Sullenberger. There was a guy who landed the plane.
Wait, that was him?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that was the same guy.
Same guy.
Yeah, so he...
And that gave the doc some juice. I was
big time. Yeah.
Trust that motherfucker.
He was awesome. How the Boeing lackey would, argue that, it was pilot error, the planes are perfectly safe, and then the congressman turns the question to him, and he was just like,
Nope.
He was like, I wouldn't trust anybody flying one of these planes.
Yeah.
And it goes to show, man, you
Yeah.
try to cut fucking corners, you just make everything way worse.
And then
they
it-
probably spent so much more money. Now the regulations for testing is
Yeah,
probably
I wonder-
so more
yeah.
strict that it's going to be
I
crazy.
I
hope.
wonder-
Do you really think that?
Oh,
I don't.
yeah. It
I
has to
think
be.
they have to.
They have to, like, their
Yeah.
quality control has to go back to what it was or even
I don't know if it'll go back to where it was, but I think it'll go back. It'll be increased probably temporarily. Okay,
Probably,
we
yeah.
made this fix. They said they were doing a software fix. It would take 6 weeks. I don't trust anything that important that only takes 6 weeks. First of all, but that was like another thing where it's like, well, what happened to these people? Because the CEOs of Boeing has given these statements saying like, hey, like that this plane is safe. This is all about, pilot. Like he was out there on CNBC and Maria Bartiromo, and then he's in front of Congress kind of saying the same thing. And then the board of Boeing, when things didn't go their way, probably because the stock price tanked, the CEO who oversaw all of this gets asked to resign. He resigns, and what does he get? $62 million. So that guy is fucking fine. Meanwhile, all these families,
Isn't it unbelievable?
it's just how it always goes. Same thing with like the Wall Street. In 08, all those people who got bailed out got fat bonuses.
You know where their office is, right? It's right down on the river.
Chicago, yeah.
Yeah.
On Adams.
I
used
looked
to
it up
work
after,
next to
too.
it.
I guess they had a 20-year tax
Sure
type
they
break.
did.
Oh, there was daily recruited them.
Yeah, and
That's
now
what-
they're now that's up. So like
Back to
everyone's
Seattle.
wondering what they're gonna do.
They got a pretty on the riverboat tour. They always talk about their building. It's the metro runs under it, so I guess it's not. It's one of the only buildings that's suspended.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah, it's a suspension foundation. There's no foundation. It's like suspended or some shit like that.
interesting.
But they said Boeing engineers engineered it.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
crazy.
the move to Chicago, where I'm sure it was financially great for them.
Yeah.
Okay. And I love having jobs here in Chicago, but they also said that some of at least part of the motivation was to be like, we just got to have a little buffer zone between us and the engineers.
Yep.
So they left all the engineers and their plants in Seattle, South Carolina, everywhere else. Be like, we're in our corporate bubble here in Chicago, being like, I didn't see that email. Delete that email.
Well, hopefully they get back because if they're here, it's obviously a lot of Boeing people among us. So
Yeah,
What is? I didn't know you knew so much about aviation.
I don't.
What is? What's all this talk I hear about? I hear about it on the planes all the time. These Dreamliners. That's like the new. I don't hear anything about 737 Maxes anymore. All anyone talks about is these Dreamliners.
Dreamliner.
I'll Google now.
I don't know if it's Boeing or if it's Airbus, but those are supposed to be like the creme de la creme planes.
Boeing 787. So I've been on one of these. I didn't know
I have
it was-
not.
It did not feel like a dream. So I took a red eye flight commercial. They're huge. So 787s are huge. So, but these are the ones that go. Maybe I wasn't on one of these because this picture I'm looking at.
Is it like 333?
Yeah,
The,
so I've been on a-
Transatlantics.
Yeah, I've been on a 252. Is that the same math? 252. Yeah, same math. So maybe it was, and this picture just has the seats arranged differently. But I sat in
There's 3 middle seats. That sucks.
I sat in
I
the-
guess there's 3 if it's 333 too.
Yeah, but I sat in the very middle. It was a red eye flight. I've talked about it on this show like
San
years
Francisco.
ago. San Francisco, red eye from San Francisco to Chicago, and I board, and flight was fucking full, right? So, and I, for whatever reason, I was like one of the earlier groups for coach, and I'm sitting there. And I'm watching these 2 giant looking like Hawaiian guys, okay, that they're coming on either side. There's 2 aisles. And I'm like, fuck. And they, both of these guys, like they looked like they were like rugby players or world's strongest men, like just enormous fucking humans flying to Chicago for something. So, and I'm not a small human either, like I'm 6'1", 230 probably. And so these guys sit down next to me, and it's like there was no negotiation about like the elbow room. I was just like
Smashed.
squashed sitting up like this. Couldn't even got to the point where it's like I can't have my back on my own chair because their shoulders are like so I went the whole red eye flight with my head leaning forward, resting on the seat in front of me. Dude, it was brutal. So not a Dreamliner, but I think that's just like the biggest plane they have. And I think if you look at like business class or some of these transcontinental ones, that's where the Dream comes in, because they have like the pods, basically the pods, or the seats that go all the way back. They're almost like a bed. That looks like a dream. That was not my experience.
My dream is to fly that way one day.
Well, those were the commercials. I remember like Jennifer Aniston. This was probably 10 years ago.
The shower.
It was like the Emirates.
Emirates.
Fly Emirates. Yeah. And it's like, damn, like those planes look fucking unbelievable. Nice. Yeah.
I know. How the fuck do you put a shower on a?
I don't know. And I don't know what those. I would be interested to know what the price difference is from one of those seats to just being like, I'm going private.
Salt and shit.
Yeah. All right, then. What's the rating system again?
We did 1 through 3, but it didn't really make sense to me.
So I think it was 0 through 2.
That was like recommend or like wouldn't recommend, or what was it?
Thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down. Like I don't even know what we're gonna call it.
Like that.
What do we do?
I like the Gladiator.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always do that when I'm at the movies and the previews. I always give it a.
Do you?
Yeah, like I'm with my buddies. Like I'll just I do that every time.
Let's fucking do that.
Let's use that. Yeah.
Thumbs up.
A thumbs up. So thumbs up would be like you strongly advocate people to watch.
Yeah. Like I think I enjoyed it, and I think people would like it was a good watch.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. 3 thumbs up.
Hey Ed. Dope Sick. Thumbs up. Ana Dalva. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Peaky Blinders. Thumbs up.
All right, I guess I got to watch some more and hopefully dispute your.
The football season's over. You got Sundays, man.
You know what one I watched the other night that was very good, very informative? Icon.
I heard I'm fascinated by that guy, the Hostile Takeover guy.
Yeah.
So it was HBO, right?
I always knew the name, but I didn't know, he fucking incredible story.
He's a savage.
And he's still, dude, he's 86 and he's still going. Like
he's currently going after McDonald's.
I know he's suing him for like the pork and shit.
Which I'm sure that's the real motivation there.
I know.
Probably just trying to take over McDonald's.
But it's a great doc and it's quick. You'd love it, Ed. It's only like an hour 30.
That's his sweet spot. That's his sweet spot. Yeah.
Sweet spot.
Yeah.
All right, then.
That's
Thanks, guys.
HBO, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks, guys. That's it, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.